Thanks again for coming to today's info session. I'll just turn on my camera briefly and then we'll go over some rules of the road here. My name is Andrew Klopstein, pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Assistant Director for Off-Campus Student Living in the Office of the Dean of Students. It's my pleasure to be with you this evening. I have been at Boston College for, this is now my 7th year, going into my 8th year. Both lived on campus as a resident director and now work with off-campus students. We also have a part of our unit, our graduate assistant, Ashley Fishwick. Ashley, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Ashley. I'm the GA for Off-Campus Student Living. My pronouns are she, her. I've been working as a graduate assistant for almost 2 years now, and in my 2nd year of the program, and also have experience in the Boston housing market. So excited to be with you all here today.
Yeah, and as Ashley mentioned, both of us live off campus. I'm up in Somerville, Massachusetts, which is certainly a place that any student can live, graduate or undergraduate. And Ashley is in our Brighton community. So off-campus student living is a unit in the Office of the Dean of Students. We are here to help students and faculty and staff, undergraduate and graduate students, through the off-campus housing search process, into their off-campus housing, and through that experience, however long they're living off campus. To help us in that process, we really focus on a single tool called the Off-Campus Housing Database, and you can find it at the web address on your screen. There, students are able to not only find housing, but find sublet listings. They were able to post sublet listings if they have one available for free as a result of being a student. And there's a plethora of resources available. We're going to go over the database here in a moment, as well as some of those resources later in the presentation. But we're really here for anything and everything that is related to off-campus housing. So if students want to ask about the process, we're here for that. If they have a problem in their off-campus housing with their landlord or the housing conditions, we're here to help and advise them through that as well. If you'd like to, if you or your group would like to schedule an individual meeting with us to talk about your specific search or questions you have around your lease, we can do that as well. The best way to get in touch with us is to email us at offcampus@bc.edu. Anything and everything, again, under the sun, we're happy to help. And if we can't be the ones that help you, we will refer you on to somebody who can. Some things to keep in mind, especially as first-year students. It is still very early for you to be looking for off-campus housing for your junior year, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But some things to look forward to next year as sophomores. We are going to have information sessions, 3 each semester, both fall and spring, very similar to this one, with an additional batch of information, given that your off-campus housing search is really going to kick up in that sophomore year. We also will have our October housing fair, and then we will have another housing fair in the spring in February. This is a space for you to meet with rental agents, local property management companies, internet companies, and other vendors such as furniture rental, for example. It's a really great way for you to mix and mingle with rental agencies and companies that you feel have your best interests at heart. Ultimately, if you're going to use a rental agency, you need to feel like that you're connected with them, and you need to feel confident in their ability to execute a search for you. So that's what that housing fair is about. So a lot of events coming up in your sophomore year. This is a brief glimpse of what off-campus housing and that search will look like for you now, really. And the big thing of it is you're currently first-year students. And so what I want to tell you is that there is no need to rush. Please do not feel pressure to sign on to something. As an overview, all first-year students, or all students who matriculate as first years, are guaranteed by the Office of Admissions that you will receive either 3 years of university housing, on-campus housing, or 4 years of on-campus housing. And if you don't know that, it's okay. You can contact the Office of Residential Life, and they'll be able to tell you. Or you can look in your admissions letter. It'll state in that letter how many years you were granted when you accepted the offer to come to Boston College. If you are a transfer student, if this is your first semester at Boston College, this is your 1 semester of on-campus housing. From here on out, you will need to live off campus. And so I want to be very clear about that. For our first year students who matriculated in the fall, you started in the fall semester, those 3 years of housing are good for your first year, your sophomore year, and your senior year. Your live off year is junior year. Now, if you decide to live off campus next year, your sophomore year, that does not replace the fact that your live off year is also junior year. That live off year is non-transferable. So if you decide to live off campus your sophomore year and you have 3 years of on-campus housing, you must also live off campus your junior year. In essence, you are forfeiting your sophomore year of on-campus housing. So I want to be very clear with that. It is a non-transferable live off year. Okay, so again, those 3 years are first year, your sophomore year, and your senior year. The big takeaway of what I want you to get from this presentation is that you are likely going to be hearing from your peers, both first year students and upper class students, and perhaps from rental agencies, that you need to start looking for off-campus housing for junior year now. And the reality is that is not our recommendation at all. The reality is that while this narrative is perpetuated by peers and agents, and we'll talk about why that might be the case, in reality, the majority of your peers, 54.1%, as of a survey we took in 2022, 54.1% of students surveyed signed their leases in the spring semester or the summer before their lease started. So what that means is that they signed a lease in the spring or summer of their sophomore year. So spring semester, sophomore year, they signed that lease. And then some more signed in the summer before their lease started junior year. Less than 10% are going to sign a lease in September, a year in advance. So this coming September, less than 10% of students will sign in September of their sophomore year for their junior year off-campus housing. And an even smaller minority will sign in their first year. So that would be now. An even smaller minority of first-year students sign in the spring of their first year. There is plenty of housing in the off-campus area. There is no reason any student, any first-year student should sign or should feel a need to sign for an off-campus apartment now, or in the summer, or really in the fall of their sophomore year. So please resist that narrative that you're hearing to sign early, because it is not to your benefit. And let's talk about a few reasons why. So the junior year is different. You are citizens of Boston. There are expectations of you as citizens around noise and social gatherings and things of that sort. But what I want to really highlight on this slide is that the more people that are in your apartment, the more variables, the more problems that can arise. And your leases are considered legally binding contracts. So the more people that are on that contract, the more people and expectations you have to manage. In particular, your lease is going to say that you are jointly and severally liable. This means that in the eyes of the law, you are seen as one entity. You and your roommates are seen as one single entity. Now, if one of you fails to pay the rent, that means that their share of the rent, that means that the remaining roommates will need to cover that share of the rent. If one student decides that they are going to move out of the unit and move back home, in the eyes of the law, the remaining tenants, the remaining roommates will need to ensure that the rent is paid in full and on time. And so those remaining roommates may have to cover that portion of the rent. In the eyes of the law, you are seen as one entity. So if one student violates the lease agreement, a clause in that lease agreement, all students can be held accountable. All of those students can be evicted. And so it's going to be critical that you know who is in your apartment, that you know and understand the expectations of the roommates with whom you will be living. It is really difficult in the time that I have been at Boston College, I've seen it be a challenge for students to really know and be on the same page as their peers if they're looking for off-campus housing as first-year students. You've got a lot on your plate right now, trying to get through that first year of college. And the reality is that some of your friends may not be your friends come junior year. The reality also might be that some of your friends may not be Boston College students come junior year. And so to sign on to a lease agreement so early, doing so way in advance, is actually a disservice to you, because you are signing a legal contract with folks you may not even know that you want to live with, or may not even be around to live with. They might have transferred or gone back home, or whatever it might be. And so signing so early is potentially could be a real problem for you. Additionally, you do not know what semester you or your roommates might be studying abroad. And so for this reason, we recommend that students don't sign for an off-campus apartment into the spring of their sophomore year. In late January or early February, the study abroad office will send out offer letters to students around where they're going abroad and what semester they are going abroad. And we recommend that students wait until those decisions are sent out to sign for an apartment, so that you know and you can match up with roommates who might be going abroad in the opposite semesters that you or a roommate is. Again, because you need to know who's going abroad when, who might slide into that vacancy in your apartment as a subtenant, or vice versa. So again, really important that you wait, you pause, because these are some real potential disadvantages that you are putting yourself into. One thing I also want to note is that in the city of Boston, there is an ordinance that says that you, as unrelated undergraduate students, there cannot be more than 4 tenants in the unit. So again, there can be no more than 4 unrelated undergraduate student tenants living in the same unit. And so we really recommend that students follow that ordinance. Again, because the more people, the more problems there might be, the more expectations you have to manage. And if you're doing all of that so early, it can, again, just be very problematic for you. One other reason that we don't recommend you sign now is because we do not currently know when fall 2024 classes are going to begin. That date is unknown. That academic calendar has not been published. Leases historically are scheduled to begin in the area on September 1st. Now, traditionally, school starts prior to September 1st. And so when you are negotiating a lease agreement, it's going to be really critical that you work with your agent or landlord or property manager to arrange a move-in date that is prior to the start of classes. It is difficult to do that negotiation, however, if we do not know when the first day of classes are yet. So again, another reason that you don't need to sign for anything right now. It is not necessary. There is, again, housing available at all points in the year. Now, what you do end up living in may not be the exact house on the exact street with the exact amenities, et cetera, that you're looking for, but nonetheless, it's going to be a house that is a good place for you to come home to. And in my experience, the folks that are more judicious in their search end up having a better experience, that they don't rush into something with the expectations that this is the house I want because an upper class student told me that this is the house to get. If you sign for an apartment that the lease does not begin before the start of school in fall 2024, on-campus accommodations are not going to be available for you. So you're going to need to make alternative arrangements to do your classes virtually or stay with a friend off campus and delay your move-in, whatever it might be. We can help you work through that, but again, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you sign for anything now. So this is the apartment search process, and I really encourage students to take a photo of this, kind of list it out step by step, what exactly you should do. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to highlight a few of these steps here. So number 4 it's going to be really important that you as first year students tour the apartments in the area that you're wanting to look at, that you check for facilities and safety concerns, that you bring that up with the rental agent or the property manager or the landlord who is showing you the unit. This is highlighted because, unfortunately, a lot of students will sign for an apartment without even seeing the space. It happens every year without fail, that a friend will have seen the space and said, oh, it looks great, and tell their friends who they're planning to live with that it's good to go, that you should sign on to the unit, and those students do. And then when they move in or their parents come to check out the space on move-in day, or perhaps they're making a visit prior to move-in day, they will kind of have red flags go up because this is not the space that they thought they were signing up for, is not in the condition that they are expecting based on the price of monthly rent that they're paying. And so it's going to be critical that you as students, when you do search for your apartment, which again, we recommend at least not do anything until sophomore year. But when you do your search, that you tour every apartment that you're looking to rent. Step number 6 is also really important. You need to review all of your applications, all of your lease agreements, all of your addendums, and all the documentation for the apartment that you're looking to apply and sign on to at the same time. The reason being is often when you're putting in an application, you have to put in an application fee. That fee is generally non-refundable. So what this means is if you are approved, your application is approved, and you then read the lease agreement, and you say, actually, this is a lease I don't feel comfortable signing on to, and you withdraw from this process, you lose that application fee. You do not get that back. And so it's best to just review all the documentation up front. That way, when you apply for the apartment, you know exactly like, yes, if I'm approved, I'm definitely going to sign this lease because I've already looked at it. I've already negotiated over it. It's good to go. So when you do your search, form your group, stick with your group. Don't leave anybody high and dry. We just went through housing selection. And I hope that none of you were left by the wayside, or that I hope that none of you did the leaving by the wayside. Don't leave your friends hanging. Don't leave them stranded. Stick with your group and tour multiple apartments so that you get a sense of what's in the community. This seems like common sense, but what happens, in reality, what we see student groups doing is that they sign on to the first apartment that they see. And again, this is a disadvantage that they are putting themselves in, right? Because you might be missing a real gem if you don't view the apartment next door to the one that you're currently viewing, right? You also have no negotiating room if you only view one apartment. If you view apartment number 1 and you're like, okay, this is good, but you view apartment 2 and like it's cheaper and it has better amenities and XYZ, and you go back to apartment 1 and say, hey, look, apartment 2 is a better place to live for less money. What are you going to do to make it better? If you don't look at that second apartment, you're never going to be able to make that negotiation possible. So look at multiple apartments. Again, there's no rush to sign anything. You looking at a second apartment is not going to mean that it is gone the next day. All right, so generally the most important part of this presentation is financing. And so let's talk a little bit about financial aid. So living off campus can impact your financial aid eligibility, okay, your financial aid package. The reason being is because you have your cost of attendance, which is your cost to come to Boston College. This year, you're living on campus, so you have your room and board factored into this cost of attendance. And then you subtract your expected family contribution. This is the money that the government determines your family is likely to contribute to your education, and that determines your financial aid eligibility. Well, if your cost of attendance doesn't include on-campus room and board, then your cost of attendance is going to be lower, which means that your financial aid eligibility will be lower, okay? And so Prior to signing any off-campus lease, conducting any off-campus search, it's critical that you as a student talk with student services and your financial aid advisor in student services to determine, okay, well, how is living off campus going to impact my financial aid package? Now, Boston College does try to make up and account for some of that, but you need to know exactly what that number is going to be because you need to create a budget. You need to know how much you can afford in monthly rent. And so again, signing so early without having done some of this homework is putting yourself at a disadvantage. Okay, so upfront costs. This is what you will have to pay when you do sign on to a lease agreement. Again, we hope that is in your sophomore year, ideally in the spring of your sophomore year. You're going to have to put up the first month's rent when you sign that lease. Let's say just for, let's say for math's sake, this is $4,000. You and your 4 roommates each are paying $1,000 a piece. So it's $4,000 for your first month's rent. You're also going to be asked to pay the last month's rent. That's an additional $4,000. So in this case, we're at $8,000 right now. The reason you're asked to pay that last month's rent is because the landlord wants to protect themselves. They don't want you to leave them high and dry in that last month as you move on to your new place, back onto campus, or perhaps another off-campus apartment. Number 3 is your security deposit. This is generally 1 full month's worth of rent. So in this case, another $4,000. It can be less than that. And if that's the case, you're getting a great deal, right? And if it's more than that, you need to let me know because that's illegal. They cannot charge more than 1 month's rent for a security deposit. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that deposit is. So at this point, we're at $12,000 up front. The lock and key change fee is pretty, nominal. And then your finder's fee. This is the commission that you pay a rental agent if you decide to use one. The finder's fee can be any amount. It is generally considered to be 1 full month's worth of rent. So another $4,000 in this case. It can be less than that though. And if that's the case, that's great. If you don't have to pay any broker's fee, any finder's fee, that's awesome. But if you're asked to pay more than 1 month's worth of rent, you're getting a bad deal. And I would really recommend you find a different agent. So if we were to sign onto this hypothetical lease, we would need $16,000 upfront. You and your 3 roommates would need to pay $16,000 upfront upon signing a lease. And so again, good to know your budget, to take your time, to ensure that you are liquid enough to make those payments. Okay, so what is a security deposit? Well, when you sign on the lease, this is the check that you give them that they will hold on to. They're going to deposit that in a Massachusetts bank. And within 30 days of getting that check from you, they need to have given you a receipt with the name and the location of the bank where the money is being held, the account number, and the amount of the deposit. Now, this security deposit is essentially a fund that the landlord holds on to make repairs after your move out for damages that you have caused to the unit that are beyond normal wear and tear. And so any damage that you do, whether it's an accident or otherwise, to the unit would be subtracted from that deposit. And at the end of the tenancy, within 30 days of the tenancy ending, you would receive whatever is left of that deposit after repairs are made. And just a reminder is that security deposits legally cannot be more than 1 month's worth of rent. Okay, so some of you might decide to use a rental agent. Now, an agent is not necessary to find an off-campus space, but it can be a real benefit if you want access to listings beyond what is on our off-campus housing database, or if you really want them to conduct this search on your behalf. It can be a real service. Again, however, the cost of that service is the finder's fee, and that's 1 month's worth of rent. Now, a landlord, just as an FYI, a landlord can't charge a finder's fee, even if that landlord happens to also be a real estate agent. Okay, so an agent who owns a property can't be the agent for their own property, essentially. They cannot charge that finder's fee. I will show you in just a moment some of the agencies that we would recommend you use in our area, so stay tuned for that. One thing to know about agents is that they get paid when you sign the lease, so they are incentivized to get you to sign early and without negotiation. This is likely why you are hearing from agents that, and probably your peers, that you need to sign now, right? Because they want that commission, right? So they have an alternate interest in you signing the lease. They might say to you that you need to sign the lease by tonight or it's going to be gone tomorrow. And again, that's just a pressure tactic. That's not how the real estate market works. That is not going to be the case for you. I promise you that. That apartment will still be there. There is, again, no rush to sign for anything. We've already talked about shopping around with agents at the off-campus housing fair. We really recommend you find one that you trust that doesn't pressure you to do anything. Again, if you hear that slogan in bullet 2, that's a red flag. You need to run for high ground. Don't use them. One other thing is that you might be asked to sign a broker disclosure form. This is normal. It just essentially outlines what the broker's role is, the agent's role is, and that they are generally working on behalf of both the landlord and the incoming tenant. Okay, so this is the estimated cost for you on a low, medium, high range across all the neighborhoods in our area, based on also the type of accommodation. And so I've circled here, living with others, a shared room. This is what you are currently living in. You are currently living in a double, probably, most likely. You have a direct roommate that you're sharing that bedroom with. And so if you were to do that same arrangement off campus, it's probably going to run you around $1,000 per month, medium range. This is, again, data we collect from our database and from other listing sites. Now, a lot of undergraduate students like to have a little bit more privacy in their junior year, and if they're living off campus, and so might want their own room, and that's fine. But know that that would cost more, most likely, generally. And so in this case, we've estimated that cost to being about $1,500. Now, you'll be able to find stuff that's on the lower end of this or outside of this range or on the higher end, and of course higher than this range, but it should be a good estimate for you as you're looking to budget. And again, we'll go over the rental cost comparison in a little more detail in a moment. This is just to give you some sense of what most students pay. So that same survey that I mentioned earlier, 57% of students pay between $900 and $1,200 a month, with 23% paying $1,000 to $1,100 per month. A little less, between 900 and 1,000, a little bit more less than paying between 1,100 and 1,200. All right, so as we end our presentation today and jump into some of the resources, I did want to mention that Marathon Monday is coming up. And so for you as first-year students, yes, it's definitely an exciting day, but we recognize that underage students often will seek the off-campus community for parties, and they will feel pressured to excessively drink alcohol on that day. And in so doing, they jeopardize their well-being and their good standing conduct-wise at the university. So as first-year students, I'm really going to recommend you to take advantage of all the on-campus programming on Marathon Monday and just avoid the off-campus area entirely. The reason I say that is because historically off-campus students have expressed to me and my colleagues frustration with first-year and sophomore students who come into their community, they disrupt the community and damage their personal property, their apartments and things like that. So if you scan that QR code on your screen, this is going to take you to the Mile 21 schedule events. And there's a whole day of programming and really cool events that you can expect coming up here in mid-April. All right, so let's jump over to some of these resources that I mentioned. I did want to walk you through our off-campus housing database just quickly. So again, this can be found at offcampushousing.bc.edu. And as BC students, you're able to log in with your Agora username and password by clicking the sign in button here. It says my name because I'm already logged in. And in logging in, it's going to take you to the housing section of the site. And so you can see this is our Chestnut Hill campus and this is our Brighton campus. And all the blue dots are the apartments that are available around campus. And you can zoom out or zoom in, whatever you'd like to do. This over here is the Newton campus. Most undergraduate students don't need to live over here. This is mostly for the law school. But I've clicked into one of the units, one of the listings on our site, the overlook at St. Gabriel's Apartments. It is a luxury apartment complex. So certainly keep that in mind as I'm showing you this. But let's say, for example, if you're interested in viewing this, take a look at all the photos on the site, take a look at the 3D model or the videos they've recorded, and what units are available and when they are available and how much they cost and any models that they have available. It's a great resource. Most importantly, though, I think for all of these listings, the apartment description is going to be critical. This is where you find some of the nuances of the property. And of course, any of the amenities, you can kind of see how long it takes to get to campus and things like that. If you are interested in the unit, you can outreach to them directly through the site here. If you like it, you can star it, you can heart it, or if you want to give them a call, you can call them through the number there. The next part of the site is our roommate finder feature. Now, some of you may be in need of roommates to kind of lower your costs. Totally understandable. Would recommend, in fact, I would recommend having a direct roommate is the best way to lower your cost in the off-campus community. But here you're able to create a profile. If you have a place, you've signed a lease agreement and you're looking for somebody to fill a vacancy, you can list yourself as somebody who has a place. Or if you are in need of both an accommodation and somebody to live with, you can list yourself as needing a place. And you can likewise filter out those who have a place already. And if you're looking for a unit and a roommate, might as well click on their profile to see if they could be a good compatible roommate for you. You'll notice that this includes both Boston College students as well as students at neighboring universities, because reality is you can live with whoever you want. I would generally say most BC students are gonna, if they're gonna live with another university student, it's probably going to be a Boston University student, just simply given that it's the closest one to campus. And middle way is still going to be easy to get to BU and to BC by public transportation. So you can filter out exactly what it is that you're looking for in a roommate through all of these options here on the right. And ultimately, it's going to be a great resource for you. And lastly, we have our resources page here. You can find a whole slew of things on this site. And you can search for them as well. So if you have any specific things that you're looking for, I'd recommend taking a look at this search feature. One of the resources we have on the site is our rental cost comparison. You've already seen this bottom half in our slides. This top half is generally considered to be a whole unit's cost, while this bottom half is the individual cost. So let's say for Brighton, which is where a majority of our undergraduate students tend to live, Brighton 2-bedroom is going to cost for the unit anywhere between $2,400 and $2,700 per month. So again, this is just an approximation. And so you're going to again find stuff on either side of this range here. The other resource that I wanted to point out is our agents and brokers page. So this is on our resources tab. This is just simply the first little tile here. You can find all these agents posting on our site, and they are generally considered more reliable than, I would say, any random agency that you might find walking down the street. These folks, if they were, while we don't vet any specific unit on the off-campus housing database, if these agencies conduct improper business practices, unethical business practices, or if any of their units are particularly problematic, we have the ability to both remove the listing and ban the lister. And so this is why we really recommend using a database. It's certainly more trustworthy than perhaps a Craigslist or a Facebook Marketplace or any other listing site. Again, because we have some some element of control here. But again, however, I want to make very clear, we don't vet every unit that's on the site. But again, because these agencies are allowed to post here, it means that they generally are conducting good business practices and their units are good. So if you are interested in using an agency, this is probably where I would recommend you start. One other thing I want to point out is our off-campus life website. You'll find events and contact information and a link to the database if you ever forget what it is. Most importantly, though, you can find a recording of an undergraduate student off-campus info session on this site here. So you can click and play this video. This has more information than what you received today and is generally reserved for sophomore students. But this is, again, today's presentation is just to give you a little taste of what we see in the community. Additionally, this frequently asked questions page is really helpful to kind of answer your most basic questions. So I would recommend taking a look at this as well. All right, so that's the end of today's presentation here. Some big takeaways again is that I really want to emphasize there is no rush to sign for anything now. Please resist the urge to sign for something in your first year. I wouldn't say it if I didn't think that it actually works against you. For now, I'm going to turn it on over to Ashley to kind of see what questions we have to answer.
Yeah, no questions in the chat. So if you'd like, go ahead and submit those to me, but I don't have any yet, or feel free to unmute yourself to ask those questions.
I had a quick question. So did I understand correctly on the financial aid page that because they are living off campus, their financial aid would be reduced compared to someone who got 4 years on campus?
Yes, generally based on the equation for how financial aid is calculated, that is correct. Now, I also mentioned that Boston College tries to take into account that and make some adjustments to their package, but I can't speak to what that adjustment is because it is different for every student. And so it's important that the student do talk with their aid advisor to see exactly what they have to work with as far as aid goes in their junior year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've got one question here. Any tips for finding summer housing for this summer? I'm assuming that most of this information applies, but is there anything else we should keep in mind? Something to note on the off-campus housing database, specifically on the housing tab, you can filter so that you can only see summer sublets, which would be a really good option if you're looking only for summer housing. Sometimes BC students that live off campus won't be here, and so will sublet their spaces. We also have a list of BC students that are subletting their spaces over the summer. And if you're a student and you're interested in seeing that, happy to connect with you about that. I would just recommend, I can plug in our email here, and I would just recommend that you reach out to our office so I can send that along. Andrew, anything else?
The only other thing I would mention is that we have a how to sublease guide. And so that guide is on a resources page of our database, and it walks you through not only all of the steps to subleasing a space, but also some tips and tricks that might help you secure better rental rates and things like that. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that. Again, one big thing I would say not to do is to use fake Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. We have seen students get scammed, unfortunately. I did get a question in here. Are most leases for a full year? Yes, most leases are going to be 12 months starting on September 1st. It's pretty uncommon to see a lease less than that. It would be more common, I suppose, if you were coming in from abroad, spring semester, you were looking to live in the off-campus community in January. You might see a 9-month lease, 8 to 9 month lease at that point. But if you're looking to sign for something starting on September 1st, it's almost guaranteed to be 12 months in length. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for coming to the first year student off-campus info session. We will try and post this recording on our website, but if you would like a recording of it, you're welcome to reach out to us again via email, and we will be sure to send that along. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.